If you guys want to learn Arabic, then check out the Kalam app. It's an app that I've been using to practice because I still don't know Arabic, but I'm getting there. And what's great about the app is they give you little exercises to make sure that you actually remember what you're learning. You could use it just a few minutes every day and it will drastically improve your Arabic speaking.
How many people are even political? How many people are aware of the white genocide? How many people are going to have...
Okay, come on. White genocide? Let's be real here, man. Let's not use inflammatory terms for no reason. A geno is the forced removal of an ethnic, racial, religious, or national group through 6 means. They give 6 means. One is by like removing the parents from the kids. Another is by completely just unaliving them. Another one is by creating a situation, creating circumstances in which that population is likely to not survive. And there's like 3 more. I don't think that's happening to you guys. This is more of like an ideological thing. America's still majority white, and I don't see that changing for a long time.
There's probably no one else with a platform as large as mine who speaks up for white people ever. And one of the problems with extreme right-wing white people is we have this infinitely divisible, constantly searching for more and more based to the point where no matter how much you do for them or try to help them, you're going to eventually not be based enough for them.
That is true. Something I find crazy about this whole discussion is this idea of defending white people. You're going to defend the people who are like suffering the least. Let's be real. Out of all the ethnicities in the world that experience suffering, you're gonna defend the white people. Their suffering is this feeling and this fear that they're going to be overtaken and overthrown and outdone by some other group of people. That's their fear. While other ethnicities live in a reality where they were overtaken and outdone, subdued and oppressed by other people. For example, the Arab world. Either they're completely bombed and eviscerated, economically sanctioned, or a puppet regime of a political government's put in place that just serves the interests of another country. These are the countries that need to be spoken up for. These are the people that need to be spoken up for, not white people. It's the white people that are doing it to them. Obviously not every single white person, but like if you look at verbatim what's going on in which country and who's leading it and running it, yeah, the white people are kind of just doing that to the other ethnicities, the other races. But
this is seen amongst white people in general. If we removed all the black people from Western civilization today, within 30 years, the Germans would be fighting the Italians again. I mean, that's what happened. Only 30 or 40 years ago, the Irish and English were blowing each other up. And now Ireland and England's both full of asylum seekers from the boats. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So this infinitely divisible, this constant search for the more and more based version, I actually think in some ways subverts the whole movement. The movement you've launched is so fantastic. The cultural effect you've had is also fantastic. But the biggest threat to the movement is not going to be external. It's going to be internal. And there is a percentage of people, no matter what I say, in defense of you, in defense of white people, in defense of Western civilization, come along and say, because my dad is black, who was a chess genius, by the way, is the only reason I'm even smart, that I'm a piece of shit and I need to be kicked out or I need to whatever. And I don't care because truthfully, I think it's hilarious.
For any movement, the most destructive part usually comes from the inside. There are cases where an outside force just completely destroys them, but that's usually when it comes to like military force. Like if you have one tribe being completely eviscerated by another tribe. But when it comes to movements, religions, ideologies, you can only break social cohesion from inside. It's not a physical chain that someone with the hammer can just come in and smash, right? Usually they come in and they start dividing the people. I know we're one group, but some of us say this and then others say that, like these people, and they start labeling them. The left people say this, and the right people actually disagree. They say that. And there are actually studies done that show that groups with interfighting are more likely to violently disagree on the small disagreements they have than two completely different groups would on their major disagreements. For example, you might find that Muslims will argue more on like being Athari or Ashari or Maturidi than they would argue with like Christians who believe in Jesus as God or believe in a Trinity. Or even if they debate equally, the debate internally of Ashari and Athari and Maturidi or whatever Al-Qaeda or whatever it is, usually is a lot more close to home than it, you know, debating a Christian on if they believe in Trinity or not. And it's because we attach the movement to ourselves, our being. It's who we are. So that infighting completely destroys movements. That is how the Muslim empire fell. That's exactly how the Muslim empire fell. The West put in agents who we know by name. Agents, people named Muhammad, people named Abdullah, people named whatever. They put them in the Muslim world to start saying, yeah, but the Europeans got some pretty good technology though. let's just take all of their stuff and forget our religion. And then you have other people who are Muslim who are saying, well, let's not take their technology or their culture or their way of life or anything, because it's a trickling effect. It's a slippery slope. Once we take their technology, if they cut us off from it, then we might feel a bit, well, maybe let's give in a little bit to get that stuff back. We might be in a bit of servitude to them. We might become dependent, reliant on them. So one group is saying, let's take everything. The other group is saying, let's not take anything at all, because that's a slippery slope. And then they start fighting internally. The social cohesion goes down. The will to fight goes down. And then we get outdone. And then we get destroyed. Then they divide our countries up. This is Morocco. This is Libya. This is Egypt. This was Palestine, but guess what's going to be there now? Guess who's pulling up? And then this is Syria, Iraq. This is Iran. And let's just divide everything up and put in our own governments. Oh, this ruler doesn't actually want to obey us? Okay, smite him. Let's put in another ruler.
And Tucker, who, me and him have a bit of a history, he calls me a basement dwelling, weird kid. He says I'm a CIA agent. He unloads this personal attack on me.
It is crazy that Tucker Carlson, who applied to work at the CIA, whose father worked in the CIA, would say that Nick Fuentes is the Fed at the CIA. That's kind of crazy. I feel like a revolution is about to happen in this decade. People are waking up. You know what's very interesting? I was reading Al-Muqaddimah by Ibn Khaldun, which this was written in like the 1300s. Okay, written in the 1300s, but it's profound. Speaking about history and kind of the science of history, culture. So he basically spoke about economics, sociology, philosophy, religion, and history all in one book, and like the philosophies of all of those studies before they were a thing. So this man was phenomenal. May Allah have mercy on him. And in it, he gave the example of the children of Israel. When Allah freed them from Fir'aun, they were walking across the desert. They got to Palestine, and God told these people who just recently were slaves to the Pharaoh, being whipped, being lashed, being beat, being abused, they were submitted completely. God tells these people to go fight a war against the people living in modern day Palestine. You know what they said? They said, I don't think so. They're pretty big. They're pretty big. I don't think I'm going to. And then they said, Moses, why don't you and God go and fight and we'll just chill here and like we'll come in when it's done. So God caused them to wander the desert for 40 years, right? And Ibn Khaldun in this book, he makes this note that they wandered for 40 years, meaning that the previous generation either died or got too old to do anything. And that's enough time for a new generation to be born. This new generation was not born living the slave life that their parents were, literally their parents. They're living now in the middle of the desert, kind of like how the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, grew up in the middle of the desert, scorching hot sun. And now this is a new kind of person. The previous people were sedentary, they were inactive, they were weak, they were subdued. This new group of people were like, we're going to survive in the desert. We're going to catch our own food. We're going to slaughter it. We're going to cook it. We're going to fend for ourselves. If people are traveling and then trying to attack us, we're going to defend ourselves. Scorching hot sun, got to fight to survive. These are the people 40 years later who ended up fighting the army in Palestine. So it did take one generation of different circumstances, of people waking up, of people having to survive, of people fighting to be mature enough to go fight that war. So that was a very interesting point that he made in that book. And I think we're getting close to that. I mean, when you have 2 million people in a concentration camp, half of whom grew up in that concentration camp in Gaza, yeah, you're going to have a lot stronger people. You're going to have people who are like, I have literally nothing else to live for. I have nothing else to die for. And they're going to be stronger than the people who you just put in that concentration camp 17 years ago.